Hi guys, welcome to another movie crew review. Today we'll be reviewing The Life of Chuck.
The movie stars Tom Hiddleston, Jacob Tremblay, and Chiwetel Ejiofor.
So, in this adaptation of a short novel by Stephen King, we see Chuck Krantz coming to the end of his life and the steps that he is going throughout his life, seeing different emotions and human interactions that he's been through. So, we're going to get into the review today, and Cameron is going to take us off.
Yeah, straight away, this movie throws you in at the end, which I really found surprising. But throughout the movie, it really makes sense why they start at the end as opposed to the start. It really worked out really well. And it left me fully invested in the story, finding out why we are where we started and leading towards that backwards was interesting, and I was fully captivated. I was just like, who is this Chuck guy and why is he around, and this world is empty without him, but he's there, and it was just like a post-apocalyptic world, but it's at the end, so you get the drips and drabs of why the world is going to end, but you're at the point when now it's waiting, and the movie comes perfectly full circle, and I just really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. I mean, that's the whole point of it in my eyes, and it just pays off perfectly. I mean, all the acting throughout the movie, I mean, this is one of the rare occasions where it's really star-studded cast, and really they all perform brilliantly, and they all have their standalone moments in this film, and each character was like, I was fully invested into why they're part of this world and their exploration of why they're in the world, and just the explanation throughout going backwards was just mind-blowing to me, really. I mean, it's something I haven't really viewed before as a movie, so I was really puzzled where it said Act 3 at the start of the movie, and I'm like, this is going to be interesting how they sort of dive back to go forward, but it really does it really well. And even the music, like, it's just the way it cuts. Like, at the end of the movie, I remember hearing the same songs and watching the same movies that they were watching at the start of the movie, but that's the end. It's really, it might sound a bit complicated, but when you're watching the movie, it just makes total sense by the end of it, and just like, wow. I mean, it's a Stephen King novel, well, based off a Stephen King novel, so I'm not really surprised of how intuitive it is and how sort of mind-boggling it is. It does, well, for me personally, you just ask questions about yourself, how you would be in this situation of seeing the end without knowing when the end is. I think it does make you ask that question about yourself, and I think that does it really well. But it keeps it sort of lighthearted, and it just by the end of it, it feels like somber but sort of uplifting at the same time. But I mean, it was just fully invested and captivated by this story, and I really enjoyed it. John?
Yeah, I loved the film. I think that it was from start to end. I don't think there was one bit that I wasn't intrigued by. Yes, it does start out at the end of the story and then work its way back through. I think it's great for a second watch as well. I think that you'd get a lot out of it the second time around, going through all the different little hints and things that are left in the start of the film that you find out at the end of the film. I think rewatching it again, I'd be interested to go pick all those little things out. So we start off with Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, and we also see his ex-wife, played by Karen Gillan, going through like the last 9 months of the world. As you find out in the end of that first, or the last act, but the first act of this film, it's more Chuck's subconscious, and it's really Chuck himself. So I was a bit thrown by that. It was fantastic writing in terms of I wasn't expecting it. I didn't get that from any kind of trailers or anything, so I really did like that. And then you go on to Acts 1 and 2, or first you go on to Act 2, which is pretty much just a prolonged dance scene with Tom Hiddleston's Chuck, and I did enjoy that. I think it was good to see that kind of different side of Chuck, and we don't know where his life has come from. we've only seen him thus far in the advertisements of like thank you Chuck Krantz. So I love that. But probably my favorite dance scene was at the end of the film, or just before the end of the film, the young Chuck Krantz, he was doing a dance at a high school ball or with the young eighth grader, and I really like that. It brings all the characters back together, like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Karen Gillian, all the different people of his life we get to see in that scene. And for me, that was probably like my favorite part of the film, is that the third act in the film. But yeah, Act One, I just think that the whole film's told fantastic. The way that it's all intertwined, the storyline, the positivity that comes out of these characters, even in tragedy, just shines throughout. Mark Hamill's character really interesting and intriguing, because he's probably the only one that you get to see a different side compared with Chuck, because they've kind of seen the same thing. So I don't want to ruin anything, but when you watch the film, that will make sense to you. So I highly recommend it. Moon?
So I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan. He's my favorite horror director. And the reason I love him a lot is because there is so much grief, and like there's just so much sadness, and the characters are so relatable, like in everything he has done. And it reflects here, like the boys harped on, like the structure of the movie. I think he has a knack of doing this thing. He tells the story in like a different order, and then intertwine it like every time, intertwine it at the end. And this is done beautifully here. Like the movie unpeels itself as we go on, and like the third act, basically the first act of the movie, is just so much like pain and dread, and I was so much emotionally invested in like that like figment of his mind. And then the second end, I hate like dance numbers, but I enjoyed so much of it here. Uh, then the last act is, I think, it's such a beautifully structured movie, and like I wanted to cry and I wanted to laugh. Like even though it's so sad, but you sort of feel like it's okay at the end. And I don't think I've seen a movie in a long time where the conversations are so in depth and so deep. Especially like in the beginning, there's a conversation about when the Earth Big Bang happened, and it was so in depth, and I was just so lost in the conversation. I was thinking about literally everything. And there was another one, and how those conversations like happened like before, and how they like was a figment of his mind. The way it was presented it was so beautiful. It was such a, I don't know, it was so great. I absolutely love this movie.
Yeah, I think the narration throughout the whole movie was great as well. Just describing each sort of scene in each phase of the story really helped just fill in those gaps for the story and what they're thinking, rather than just having dialogue. But the narration was just beautiful. Like it was serious but quirky but humorous, all in the same breath. Like it's not heavily narrated, but the times it is, it's important, but it sets the scene that you're just about to watch or viewing. So it really did help me get through this movie. I
Yeah.
think that was done well.
Kind of reminds me of Stand By Me in that respect for the
Yeah.
narration.
Yeah.
Nick Offerman is
Nick
fantastic
yeah.
with the narration. Listening to his voice, it was nice, calm, soothing, but you really get the comedy side of it in the Act 2 scene where the girlfriend is talking about breaking up with her boyfriend, and he's narrating it pretty much.
Yeah.
That's probably the
It's
funniest he gets, but yeah, it's really good. I think that there are some things that you'll find don't seem to have that much importance, like at the start of the film, that by the end of the film, when you watch it, you see how much more significant they actually are. Like the one that stuck out for me was the Walt Whitman at the start of the film, when the students like reading Walt Whitman, and then all this other stuff happens that seems so much more important. But then at the end, we see why that particular passage and the meaning of it to Chuck Krantz is there, and it's just so enlightening, and it's just a feel-good movie. Like all this tragedy happens in the film, and at the same time, I came out of it just happy and positive. Like I wasn't depressed from it or anything like that. So I think it was great writing and great filmmaking.
Yeah, so how is like written? You read this?
Yeah, I
Kind
read
of,
the short story.
is it
It's
wrote in?
pretty much like beat by beat the same film.
Okay.
There's a couple of small things like the Chiwetel Ejiofor conversation with his wife where he's going over the Carl Sagan the calendar.
Yep.
Like that wasn't in that short story, but like beat for beat, there's not like a difference of ending or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's pretty much the same film, so it's pretty true to the source material.
Yeah, just this movie hit so many different emotions. Like some of the scenes were very eerie and just I felt a bit on edge. But then other scenes I'm like happy, other scenes I'm sad. It just feels it depicts life in the most perfect way in my opinion. It just like all those emotions encapsulated by just this one movie is just crazy to me. I think it done that really well.
And I love the door thingy, like something is locked in there and he can't see before we see in the beginning.
Yeah.
And finally he sees it. It is so sad, but what he sees, like even he goes that waiting is the hardest part, but you still feel fine
Yeah.
after you seeing that scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good that because you see the difference between what he does with his character and Mark Hamill does
Yeah.
with his character, and so it's good to see the different paths that is taken. That's probably like the best duality of it, and it's only at the end that you realize the duality of what has happened. Throughout the film, you won't get it until the last scene, and then everything connects it. That's why I reckon this film would also be good on a second watch,
Yeah, 100%.
because you can see it in real time, what's happening. Knowing what's going to come, you can see it and observe those things better. So it's standout.
All right, guys, gonna give our scores.
Yeah.
Moon, how many chucks out of 10?
9.5 chucks out of 10.
John?
Yeah, 9.5 chucks out of 10.
Yeah, I'll give it 9.5 chucks out of 10. All right, guys, make sure to like, subscribe, check out our socials, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.